Hi, I'm Lydia, and you're listening to the Caretakers Journey podcast.
I am your host, Carol Leatham, and our meaningful conversation today is a bit out of the ordinary. A few months ago, I got an email with a news article attached, and the title of the article was, "My Mom Needed Mental Health Treatment, and What She Got Was a Jail Cell." Well, I opened the article because I was really curious, and the story was all about a woman who suffered from mental health issues. And one day she had a psychotic break, and during that psychotic break, she set her house on fire. And as the house started to burn, she came out of the psychotic break long enough and got lucid enough that she realized what she'd done, and she called the fire department, and they were able to save the house. But before the day was over, she was arrested for felony arson and went to jail. This caused me to just kind of take a breath. There's a whole lot more information. The woman had been struggling with mental health issues, but not talking about it. And she needed help, but in going to prison, she didn't get the help that she needed. So this sent me down a rabbit trail of investigation, and I discovered a report that came out in March 2024, just a few months ago, and it was released by the Prison Policy Initiative. It's called the Prison Policy Initiative Report, and the statistics I'm about to give you just kind of made me ill. It concluded that 80% of the women in our state prisons are mothers. Most of them are primary caretakers, and 76% of them have had past or current mental health issues. In the last few decades, women's incarceration has grown at twice the rate of men. This article by the PPI went on to say that most of these women are single mothers living in poverty, and they have no community to encourage them. They don't know the warning signs, and they fear reporting any type of a mental health crisis because they could lose their children. Even more distressing, as if it could get more distressing for me, the 2021 Pew Research study tracked American attitudes towards single mothers. And here's what it said. In 2018, when people were asked if women raising children on their own was bad for society, 40% said yes. By 2021, that answer had increased to just under 50%, which means that these poor women are out there, single mothers with no community, and 50% of the American population thinks that their situation is bad for us. Well, I went back to the March 2024 PPI report, and it said this: there are 2.6 million children in the United States who have a parent who's either in jail currently or has been in jail. This caused me to approach a friend of mine named Lydia, and I have asked her to join me today because she is boots on the ground. And as I start to tell you who she is, you're going to go, okay, let's see what she has to say. So today I have a very special guest. Her name is Lydia. She's a wife and a mom of 3. She has been a correctional officer in California for 14 years. She currently works in the only California prison that still has the death sentence involved, and it's a women's prison. She has a degree in criminal justice. She's taught criminology classes. And for the last 3 years, she's been working in correctional counseling, and she's discovered that this is where her heart really, really is. And she's now trying to seek a full-time position in this field where she can help with programming and rehabilitative programs. Lydia loves the theater and acting on stage. She loves family time, and she resets by reading, listening to worship music, and meeting with her community group from church. She also serves as worship leader in her church. And Lydia and I share a love of being outside in nature with our coffee. And I am so excited to welcome her to the show. Lydia, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much, Carol. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm excited to dive into this conversation, Lydia. And it's, like I said, it's a little bit out of the ordinary. And I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I don't know that I've ever heard anybody even try to tackle this subject. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited that you and I are going to try to just kind of unpack it a little bit today. So, Lydia, tell us about your job and why. How did you get into this?
um, Gosh, well, it was years ago when I was in the market for mortgage loan processing. So that was like 2007 when everything kind of crashed and burned, and I had to figure out what am I going to do next.
What's next?
Right. But I always knew somewhere deep down, like my desire was wanting to help people. I wanted to be that person who could help someone to make a difference in their life, for change and improvement and transformation. And um, it just kind of all came together. My dad has a 30-year career under his belt in corrections, so he was a big influence in that regard. And I thought, what better people to help than the incarcerated individuals? So I pursued, a degree in criminology and a career in corrections. So it's definitely um, posed so many different things, and helping people looked so much different than I could have ever imagined.
One of my mom's friends was very high up in the prison system for
Mm,
years. And I remember having a few conversations years and years and years ago before mental health issues even became a part of my life.
right.
And I remember talking to her about what it was like to walk into a prison. And she said, you get to know the, she goes, there's all kinds of people. She goes,
Yes.
it's kind of like a little world when you walk through the gates of the prison. There's this different world. There are the people who don't want to do anything and just are going to be in prison for the rest of their
Right.
lives. Then there are people who go in who really want to try to be rehabilitated. And she said there's a lot of God stuff that happens inside the walls of a prison.
Yes.
And I thought that was kind of interesting. So what are your reactions to the statistics that I shared at the intro? I shared them with you in advance, but what
Right.
were your reactions when you first started reading those statistics that I shared about at the intro to the show?
Um, Definitely kind of just bringing to the surface like the things that I'm familiar with, because I see
Okay.
a lot of that day in and day out. But what was particularly surprising was the portion of the mothers who were caretakers. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
like we know they come from trauma. We know that they're single mothers. Like that wasn't very new to me. But I have never heard anything in regard to their caretakers. So that was really interesting to me. And maybe that is just with their own children, because that's kind of just a normal thing, mothers and their children caretaking for their children. But outside of that, maybe their own parents, aunts, uncles. It just something that has never landed in front of me, nor did it cross my mind. So
Mm-hmm.
that was pretty surprising.
So for me, what it did was it kind of made me start looking at this as sort of a circular problem, which is an interesting concept because in California we have a epidemic problem with foster children
Yes.
and who are in
Hmm.
crisis, and finding parents who are willing to take on this role of caring for a child who is in the foster care system,
Right.
putting a child in a healthy home. And then I read the statistic about these moms who struggle with, single moms who struggle with mental health issues and how we're putting them. And I see this problem and I don't really know, I don't really know, and I don't know you and I are going to be able to solve this problem today. But I started to see this, if we could help here, maybe it would help here. And my church just launched a ministry for parents who are foster
Wow,
parents
that's so
or
awesome.
who want to be foster parents, because we have a huge number of women and men, have families in our church who have adopted or fostered to adopt these kids who are coming out of these just horrific situations. So they're now forming this community group for these families that are raising these foster kids. So I see this issue where if we could help here, maybe it would help here. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is kids who are raised in a world of mental health struggle
Yes.
themselves. with mental health. And so how do we break that cycle? Where can we step in and sort of use alternatives to maybe keep some of these kids from growing up like that? So share one or two of your experiences as a counselor inside the prison system where you work with mental health.
You see such an array of growth or lack of growth in the inmates. And it kind of goes back to what you had said a little bit earlier. It's really that factor of, do they want to change? Because if the desire isn't there, well, they're just going to continue on the spiral of crime and misbehaviors but then you see those who want to make that change and effort. And I really do rely a lot on my faith and the Holy Spirit prompting me to speak to those individuals. And I've come a long way in that sense, because I came in, from the very beginning, just, me as a person and my faith just wanting to help everybody. And, and it took me a long time to learn that not everybody wants to be helped. And that was hard, because I was so motivated to do so. And it's also very discouraging, to know that all the help is available, and not just maybe with specific individuals, but that's almost like a heightened help, like that someone specifically is like here to do this, but with the programs and the jobs that are offered for them to gain the skills. But in the counseling arena, it's kind of neat, because you do get a little more personal one-on-one time where you do the personal interviews with them. And even most recently, just in the last few weeks, on my particular caseload, I've had a lot of lifers, inmates who have been sentenced to 25 years or more to life, who are having an opportunity to be released earlier because of the laws that are passing and are changing. And some of them are taking full advantage of that and really seeking that help. I mean, our institution offers just, a good number. I would say close to 100 types of groups and rehabilitative programs that they could get involved with. And we encourage them to do those that are relevant to their crime. If victims were involved, drugs or alcohol were related, to take those groups, and we prep them for board of parole hearings. And it's kind of nice that in those settings, in the interviews on a professional side, but also to kind of sneak in, the faith that I have and that hope and encouragement. And you see the appreciation and gratitude in those. And that's what makes it really rewarding. Even if it's just a handful of individuals, it does make it worth it. You see the tears well in their eyes. You get to witness them listening to what you have to say. And I may not use the word God per se, but if you have faith and you believe in a higher power, you can do all things. You can make that difference. It's up to you. And so it's definitely brought kind of a new piece to the help that I've wanted to give for so long. Yeah.
So you mentioned that there are opportunities and groups and things. Break that down a little bit. Break it down a little bit more clearer. So what kind of help / treatment is offered to the women who struggle with a mental illness inside the prison? So what are some specific ways that they're offered help, or even if they're not struggling with mental health, but they've got an opportunity for parole? What are some of these groups that actually, and what do those groups do?
So the groups, again, they're all voluntary. So it's a matter of them being encouraged to sign themselves up for groups that are available. And then they go on wait lists. And that can be discouraging for them too, because some of these people are on wait lists for very lengthy periods of time, because there's only so much manpower to run and facilitate these groups. But they are available, and it's this rotation of getting people off the list and into the group. So they could be anything and everything from Pathways to Freedom, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. They're anything relevant with their crime, anger management, and they're literally in groups with other incarcerated people. And the facilitator has, a plan. They might be working off of workbooks, worksheets. There could be homework involved. They might have a book assigned to them where they read a book and they're required to write an essay on the book. And then there's questions where, like, what have you learned from this? What can you take away and apply it to your personal situation? Those are general groups. And then we have specifically even certain housing units where we have groups of inmates that are, we call them EOPs for short. That's Enhanced Outpatient Program. These are inmates who have legitimate mental health concerns and issues where they need guidance for their programming, even just from the simplest things like, coming out to get their meals, going to the chow hall kind of thing, guiding them for all their daily living, brushing their teeth, taking a shower. Those are higher levels of care that, where we kind of step in to guide them. And then everything's documented. We have a specific sheets where it shows us like, okay, what are their developmental disabilities that they need the prompting for. And we've got to, specifically track that for those individuals. And it's a lot of work because we're also manning, a couple hundred other inmates just as well, programs, getting the front door open so that they can get to their appointments and they can go to their classes. And it's definitely a collaborative effort with mental health. Obviously they have their side of things, but when they're in their housing unit and we're in there with them, we're ensuring that they have all that available to them.
So you said that there are facilitators. Where do these facilitators come from?
That could be just about anywhere. So these are staff members who are hired who have an expertise in that particular area. They could also be, individuals who have recovered from these particular areas in their life, be it the drugs, the alcohol, with anger issues, and now they're certified. We also have former inmates who have come to prison and now have been released, and they have gone and taken the work that they've done within themselves and they become certified. And then you have inmates within the institution as well where programs are offered and they can be certified peer support to other incarcerated people. And so there's a lot of opportunity, and it's a full circle of people kind of running these groups.
So somebody from like a person on the outside, if they felt like God was calling them to a ministry to people within the prison, that there are ways that they can get training and clearance so that they could actually come in and be part of this process as well.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's very exciting. So I have found, because 10 years ago when my husband began to struggle with mental health issues, I discovered that our mental health care system is completely broken. It is overwhelmed. It's gotten worse in the last 10 years since we began trying to navigate this. And I struggled to get my husband into a psychiatric and even counseling in a timely manner, just trying to find the components that help, let alone helping me, but the things that we needed to help him. And when he was first diagnosed, it would take months to get him into appointments. So inside the prison system, when someone is incarcerated because of something they did that is directly related to mental health, how does that person get the help they need inside the prison? Is it the same? Is it easier? Is it harder? What does that look like?
I think a little bit of all of that. I think in the sense that what's afforded to people outside in society is definitely offered within the prison system. I even believe that it is more valued in the prison system, so they can definitely get a lot more directly. But as you said, it is an overwhelming arena, and need, that there are shortages, and that can be staff wise, like not enough mental health clinicians to provide the care. So there are long wait lists, lines for them to
Mm-hmm.
be in, so to speak, to be seen. In a matter of crisis, it is more immediate. Um, but but there are shortfalls. Shortages in medications. I mean, and they get everything and anything that is offered on the outside, with regard to
Okay.
their mental health. And I think that's where us as, correctional staff on the line, we play a huge role in that, because as they're waiting to be seen, as they're, awaiting mental health to come and pull them aside and do a one-on-one,
Yeah.
we're there in the meantime to hold them over, to have those conversations with them and try and use our verbal skills that we're trained to do, and talk them down, to talk them through, to give them some coping skills. Years ago, when we have inmates who, are dealing with a mental health crisis or are experiencing longer terms of mental health issues, we were able to transfer them to, outside institutions, psychiatric
Mm-hmm.
institutions that could house them and properly give them that care. And when all that shut down, it was like all of a sudden we were volunteered to be those people, and it
Yeah.
was a little scary, because it's like, I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
It's just like, we know how to do our job within the realm of providing the safety and security, to the institution. Certainly not on a mental health level. But that was something that we were forced into, and over the years, we've learned to collaborate with mental health staff, with medical staff, be
Mm-hmm.
familiar with the groups that are, offered, and the skills. I mean, we even have separate trainings for us becoming trauma informed,
Wow.
so that we're
Wow.
aware what these women have gone through, and some of the causes of why they are the way they are, or why they behave,
Mm-hmm.
the way that they do. Uh, and over time, we've just kind of learned the skills ourselves to try and, get them the help that they need, or at least hold them over until they can be seen professionally.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
So you kind of, yeah. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but maybe go a little bit deeper. What are some insights that you can share with us about what could slash should change within the system, especially when dealing with mental health issues, and especially in dealing with these people who are in crisis because of a mental health diagnosis, or maybe an undiagnosis?
Sure.
Maybe how do you get them diagnosed?
I think the change I know I would like to see, but it's very challenging because everybody is so different in their mindsets. Um, is really just, seeing them for, what they've gone through, as opposed to they're criminal. They've committed a crime. They're horrible people. Because if you
Mm,
can't get past that, there's no way you're going to be able to provide them any kind of care or help. And that's really hard, because people, gosh, it's hard to explain. Um, People are hardened. Their hearts are hardened. Their
oh,
minds are hardened.
oh my gosh. That, I think you nailed it. I know for me in my journey, and I'm very outspoken about this, and I write about it in my book. The people who turned away
Mm,
because now all of a sudden my husband is struggling with mental health issues and they don't understand. And so they make these assumptions. They make these kind of comments behind the scenes to other people. And when he first was first diagnosed, and he was in the psychiatric hospital, God led me to write a blog. and I put this blog out there, and I had this website that had like this counter. It was an old-fashioned website that would count how many times people would hit a page,
Right.
and you could see whenever somebody logged onto a page. And I want to say like almost 10,000 people hit that page
Wow.
when I posted it the first time, and it was all about the few days. I mean, he was still like, he hadn't been out of the hospital, and he may not have even been out of the hospital. And I realized then that there was something going on. And then when we went to an event and I saw two men who we would have considered friends, who would have greeted us, and we may have gone to a meal with them or something, look at us, turn around and go out the back door without speaking to us,
Wow.
knowing that they saw us. It just crushed me, thinking that all of a sudden, you're wearing this sign. And so I can identify with these people who are incarcerated, because there's like this label, this scarlet letter. And at what point do we see them as a human being that
Right.
has needs? And there's a lot of people walking around out here free in the world who are, dare I say, and I'm going to probably get a lot of comments about this, but dare I say, that are not any better.
Right.
They just haven't been caught.
Right.
And so I think humanizing is so important, because when you read through the New Testament and you see how Jesus approached the people who the society at that time did not see
Right.
as viable humans, did not humanize them. Jesus humanized them. Not only did he humanize them, but he showed us that that's who he came to serve.
No, absolutely.
And so I think we have got to get past our I'm better than you attitude. And again, I'm probably going to get comments about that, but that's really what I feel. I feel like, it's hard. It's really, really hard, because I have been on this side of it now and have had to deal with a lot of the repercussions of what it's like to live with someone who's struggling with their mental health. And even this morning, I was having a conversation with my sister, because our mom has a terminal illness, and the problem is creating this hypoxia in her brain. And so there's a part of her personality that's coming out that is not very nice. And we love our mom to death, and we are desperately trying to keep her in the place that she is, because she has wonderful, wonderful care. But she's got to stop being mean to them.
Sure.
But then on the other side, she's not even aware. It's kind of like, I go all the way back to the beginning of the story. This woman had a psychotic break. She set herself on fire. I mean, her house on fire, without really knowing what she was doing, because of the psychotic break. And then when she came out of it, she's trying to fix it.
Right.
And that's kind of what I've seen. So what is one thing, as we kind of start wrapping up here, what is one thing you would want our listeners to know about these women inside the prison that you work with?
I think, you mentioned it, and it's so huge in this setting, is that they are human beings.
Yes.
Just like you and I. Their crimes are no better than our own sins. And that's a huge thing to wrap your mind around. And that's so hard for people to understand and acknowledge, and really to own. I think that if you can acknowledge that as a correctional staff member, and own that, even just a piece of it, you can start making headway into helping the individuals. And I'm not saying that that's easy, and that every day I come in and yes, that is my mindset, and that's my attitude, that's my posture, that's my heart posture. But it doesn't always go down that road, because they're in on so many different levels and states of their mental health, that they can be, as you said, abusive, and the words they use towards you are so hateful and angry, or the screaming at you and the yelling at you, and the the dysfunction that they display in the day room, all the things that makes it very hard to ground yourself in in that mindset that they're human beings. They have gone through things. It's because of what they've experienced or how they've been treated, and so they don't know any better. Yes, do they have some control over how they behave and act? But I think that's part of us as the correctional staff to be able to kind of um, steer them in the right direction, as opposed to mirroring how they're treating you, because we get nowhere and it's exhausting. Um, but it's a challenge, absolutely, every single day to work at that and be better at that, to be more quick and prompt to reach toward that instead of yelling back at them or saying, the same hateful things that they have come at you with.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's exciting for me to talk to you and to hear that someone who has a strong faith is inside the walls of the prison trying to help and model and share to the best of your
Absolutely.
abilities, within the limitations of the state that you can't
Right.
go in and just automatically preach the gospel. But I think for me, what I'm hearing you say, and if I was going to wrap it up in one statement, I think that when we look into the eyes of whether it's a prisoner in the prison or whether it's someone on the outside or whether it's my husband who struggles with mental health and is having a bad day, when we look in their eyes, we're looking into the eyes of someone that God loves. We're looking into the eyes of someone that Jesus died for.
Yes.
We're looking into the eyes of somebody that really God cares deeply about in spite of what they've done.
Yes.
And so it is inspiring and encouraging for me to hear you talk, and kind of enlighten me a little bit, because I know that you are rare within this system as far as your attitude and, how I feel like you might interact with the prisoners, but you're probably not the only one. And so my encouragement is that even in the midst of this chaos, I try to encourage people who are in my chaos and my type of a messy situation into coping and loving skills and how we can take care of the loved ones that are struggling. I see you doing that. So thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today, my friend. If you, as a listener, have thoughts or questions about our discussion, my email will be in the show notes. You can email me your questions, your comments, and I will make sure that they get passed along to my friend Lydia. And if she has a response, she will either respond to you directly or she'll come back to me and I will send you her response. And if you are curious and have never really heard about my own personal caretaking journey, the link to my website, my social media, and the book that I wrote that is a very raw, transparent, and open picture of my journey of dealing with my husband for the past 10 years with his mental health issues. It's called Are You Ready to Find Joy When Life Gets Messy? And that link will also be in the show notes. And I will be back next week for another meaningful conversation about what it looks like to be a caretaker and be on this journey of trying to honor God in the hard, messy, chaotic portions of our life. And until then, it's all about Him.